Hey, Pieguy!
No, it's not Squirrel Boy.
Hey, Rodney!
Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here, and welcome to recast number 52. I am joined by MonstersReview.
What's up?
And we have a very Nick reunion TV movie filled episode for you guys. If you didn't get enough of it last week, you're going to get more of it this week. And then probably never again. Blame Nickelodeon. So today on the recast, we are going to be talking about the Hey Arnold TV movie, the Jungle movie, the recent in quotes, it's like, 2 years old now?
Yeah.
That, and we're going to be comparing it to The Journal, which is the series finale of the original run, except it was aired out of order, so it's not actually the series finale, even though it was intended to be. There's also the movie, which no one talks about, and we're fine not talking about it.
Right.
Also on the recast this week, we're going to do a What We Watched for the rotating segment, and it's going to be on Invader Zim, Enter the Florpus.
Ooh.
So we're going to be talking about both of them, and then at the very end, we'll maybe just kind of give a ranking of the three Nickelodeon TV movie reunion special thingies. But before then, we would like to remind you that we have a Discord server. The link is in the description, and fingers crossed that it actually leads you to the correct Discord server and is actually an active link, but it should be.
Yeah.
We recently accepted Christian Goken as the first mod on the server. That isn't just like one of our friends. So thank you, Christian, for doing all of the work you do to keep the recast server an orderly place, and we're working on getting you some help on that. So everyone give it up for him. If you have a problem on the server, please let him know, or let one of us know if we are around.
Yep.
Monsters, did we have any corrections from last week?
Well, some people mentioned that we talked a lot about the splat in our little retrospective segment. Now it's referred to as Nick Rewind, and because we didn't mention that it's now called Nick Rewind, people assumed that we didn't know that. We did, it's just that I guess we forgot to mention it, or it wasn't important enough for us to mention it.
I called it the splat when it was Nick Splat, and I'm still going to call it the splat because Nick Rewind's an alright name. Nick Splat was a terrible name.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. It's kind of hard to keep track when they've rebranded 3 times in less than 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably for the same reason I call Nicktoons Network. Also because, like, Nicktoons in and of itself is not, like, if I say...
That's an umbrella term.
Right, I was watching Nicktoons. Does that mean I was watching Nickelodeon cartoons? Does that mean... Like, what does that mean? It's kind of the same thing with Nick Rewind, like... What were you watching your VHS tapes backwards?
Yeah, so there's that, and this isn't a correction, but we've been getting some pretty great and positive feedback on the changes that we made to the podcast. People seem generally receptive to it, and we're glad that you like our streamlined format. We're glad that you like the retrospective segment, and be sure to expect a lot more of that stuff in the future.
In editing, I think it was about like 45 minutes for the intro and the first segment, and then about like an hour for the Rocco discussion. And I think it really let us kind of go as deep as we want in the episode discussions, and then it also let us just kind of have fun with the first segment and go pretty in depth into the history of these announcements around these TV movies.
Right.
Okay, so what did we watch?
We watched some Invader Zim, not the series, the recent Netflix, not TV movie, just because it didn't air on TV, I guess.
It's a TV movie. I don't know. It's just short of like theatrical movie time.
Yeah, it's about an hour, 10 minutes, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, Enter the Florpus, the 2019 Invader Zim movie sequel thing.
Also, I have a correction on the statement that you just said. I did watch the series, so...
The entire thing?
The entire thing, yeah, in the past week.
Wow.
It's 27 episodes. It's not...
That's commitment.
No, it's not. Like, if I was like, oh yeah, I watched all of The Simpsons last week, you'd be like, oh, send help. Get the Smith some eye drops. But no, I did watch all of Invader Zim. I didn't do it for Rocco, and I didn't do it for Hey Arnold, but I did it for Zim. I guess just because I wasn't... I don't know, of those 3 shows, Zim was the one that I never watched in its entirety, thanks to the weird thing that happened with Nickelodeon stopping airing it and then Nicktoons Network picking it up, but like airing new episodes in 2006. Like, I don't even know if I had Nicktoons Network at that time. Like,
right.
Weird stuff. So since I never got to see the whole series and since it was so short, I was like, whatever, I'll watch it all. And I gotta say, I have never given Invader Zim the credit it deserved. It is a great, great show. Very, very different than a lot of things that were happening at the time and still now. In a lot of ways, I feel like it was very much ahead of its time and was a show. Obviously, it's well known for being a show that's like not really appropriate for Nickelodeon, something more akin to that you'd find on like Adult Swim. But no, I was always kind of like, well, technically it's interesting, but I was never into it. I don't know if I was too young or just it never clicked with me, but watching it now, I'm like, this show is great. Like, it really, really is. And the fact that it's so short, like, it's a bummer that it was canceled before. Basically, there was supposed to be like 40 episodes ordered in season 2, and they got through like 8 before Nickelodeon canned it. But I will say the show kind of seemed to maybe go downhill a little bit at the very end of what exists of season 2, so maybe it's a good thing that it's short but sweet, or the very opposite of sweet, bitter, I guess. But yeah, no, I very much enjoyed the show, and I wanted to mention that because me watching the show is very important to my opinion on Into the Florpus.
Yeah, I think that probably does make a pretty big factor.
I asked you to watch just like a random episode of the show if you had the time. Did you get a chance to do that?
I watched some of the pilot.
Okay.
So basically just Zim interacting with the tallest aliens and arriving at Earth.
I wanted you to do that because I would say that this TV movie stylistically takes a pretty decently sized departure from the show itself.
Yeah, it's quite ambitious.
Yeah. Okay, so, well, what did you think of the TV movie?
I thought it was okay. I mean, I'm not too familiar with the original. I had seen it here and there. I certainly haven't seen like more than half of the show. Yeah, I'm not really the biggest fan. It's kind of hard for me because I guess I don't know if you would consider Dib or Zim to be the protagonist. Probably Zim. And Zim is a super unlikable character because he's either like screaming or he's just pathetic. And I don't know, maybe it's a combination of the two. And it's hard for me to get behind a show where it's just a character screaming and doing nonsense. It's very niche. I know that it is very niche, and some people absolutely love it. I know that there's a lot of people that don't like it.
I think you need to watch the actual show at some point. In Florpus, Dib is like unequivocally the main character.
Yeah.
Like, he gets probably 80% of the screen time versus Zim's like 20%. And a lot of what Zim gets is more just, I guess, just kind of being the antagonist. Like, we don't get a lot of his planning per se. Like, we don't get his perspective.
Isn't the protagonist usually the character that changes the most? Or something like that?
Well, I don't know. In the show, both Zim and Dib are the protagonists. Like, episodes flip-flop on who wins, quote-unquote.
Right.
In a lot of cases, they both lose. In some cases, there's episodes... Well, there's a handful of episodes without Dib, and there's episodes in which Zim is a very, very minor role, and it's like Dib is dealing with some supernatural thing. But in the movie, it is very much Dib's show, and the thing that disappointed me the most about Into the Florpus is that it really was not as dark or edgy, and I hate to use that word because that word's been so like... Edgy is not like a good word, I guess. You know, it's like a thing that you don't want to be. But I mean edgy in the genuinely, like, Zim was an edgy, dark show. Dark Harvest.
Yeah, it was the quintessential Hot Topic show.
Will you stop that? No. The show was twisted into that. That's not what the show is. Ugh. But that's the thing. That's what I feel like a lot of the dark humor that was in the original show has been now replaced with, like, so random humor.
A lot of it was very random.
No one dies in this thing. That's all. Like, come on. Why does no one die in this thing? Why do more people die in the Hey Arnold movie than in this thing? Well, that's all I gotta say. Like, but no, like, in general, it seems like in the world of the show, everyone aside from like Dib is just like stupid and gross and like borderline like not being able to function as a human.
Yeah. Nobody has a brain.
Right. Everyone's got like hideous facial scars and like they're all like twitching and stuff. Like, I don't know. And I love that because it's such a horrible, horrible world where everything is sad and depressing.
I guess that could be like a bleak interpretation of social commentary. like from someone who just really doesn't like people.
Yeah.
Or humanity.
Sure. But I would not say you get that vibe at all from Florpus. Florpus kind of presents a little bit more of an optimistic view on humanity, I guess.
Yeah.
And the reason why we're not doing a full recast on this is just because story-wise, there just really isn't. It doesn't really share enough with anything else, to be honest. Anything would be a complete stretch, but that's not going to stop me from comparing it to the TV show quite a bit. As like, I feel like a big part of these TV movie reunions are to be a reunion, a let's show what people loved one more time on the screen. And so changing it so much, I just kind of feel like defeats the purpose a little bit. So one specific thing that was changed is Membrane, Dib's father, in the original show was horribly absentee. He appeared on a screen most of the time. Dib needed him to sign a permission slip once, and just getting him to do that like was a huge chore because he's at work and busy and crazy and all that stuff. That there was a decided change to make Dib's father and Gaz as well a lot more softer and nicer to Dib, which I just feel like why does it gotta be nicer? Jonan, apparently the creator, said that it was too depressing, but it's like, isn't that the point? Like, Invader Zim was revived as a comic book series a few years back with Jonan working on it, and a lot of the reason why the art style in the movie kind of looks the way it does is because it's based on what the comic book's art style is. Also, the changes to Gaz and Dr. Membrane and some of the other stuff were from that comic book. Gaz, if you don't remember, Dib's sister in the original show was just horrifically hateful towards Dib and everything. Dib could not get her interested unless some of her motivations are wanting to buy a new game console, having a family dinner with their dad at the pizza place, and not being cursed with this hideous curse where everything she tastes is pork. Like those are her motivations in the original show, because anything else just won't get her up off the couch. And I do get why they wanted to change her character a little bit to make her more engaged with the plot and to give Dib a little bit more of a sidekick, because he doesn't really have that. She's the closest thing he has. But I feel like they just kind of shifted it so much, and they didn't even give like an explanation in story.
Yeah, I will say visually, again, I'm not too familiar with the original, but I remember it being a lot more dark and grimy, and a lot more grays and darker hues. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's still some of that, but it's certainly a lot more colorful in this Enter the Florpus movie, and you see a lot more like light purples and pinks and greens, and the colors pop a little bit more.
It looks cutesy, and I don't like that. I mean, you joked about Hot Topic, and there's the whole thing with Invader Zim and Hot Topic and Gur. But yeah. I feel kind of like the show wasn't that, but the TV movie kind of is that a little bit. Like, the TV movie, like, okay, so the stuff with Dib and his dad and like their little arc, that would have never been in the show. There is nothing close to a moral in the show. Like, not even resembling like a genuine heartfelt moment. Not even really to be parodied, to be honest with you. Like, they just generally stay away from that, and that's super refreshing. And I get why for a movie they'd feel like, well, we got to have like a character arc, I guess. But I don't know, like a part of the show was just the fact that he had this like genius father who was super into science and theoretically could probably stop Zim anytime he wanted to, but he just didn't believe in aliens. And that was just kind of like a part of the irony of the show. But that's just completely lost now.
He's a lot more forgiving.
He's also more cutesy looking design-wise. Like, he's less tall. He's more stubby, I guess.
More of a typical dad.
Yeah. I mean, he's kind of more of his ignorance now is more just, like, stupid than anything else. Before, it was just this, like, adamant, like, son, I believe in science. And he's also, like, not around all that much. He's only in a few episodes of the show.
Yeah.
But to kind of put him in the movie in that role does fit him more into the, like, stupid dad trope.
Yeah, it's less, like, sophisticated closed-mindedness and more just stubbornness.
Yeah. Okay, so I've talked a lot bad about this, but I will say, I thought it was all right. Like, I was entertained. I thought some of the jokes worked. Like, when Zim's on his throne and he looks up and he's like, "Oh, the tallest are here," and instead it's just a flaming spaceship coming right for his face. That was a pretty good joke.
The style is great. Like, even though the visuals are a little bit different than what they were in the original series, they did a lot of experimentation.
Right.
And I still think the overall aesthetic of the show is really unique and refreshing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think the TV movie's aesthetic 100% fits Zim, as it was at least, but I do still think it's a nice looking aesthetic. I mean, I like the intro with the kind of anime style stuff. That looked amazing.
The Avatar opening.
Well, and I think that's part of why I was a little disappointed with it being kind of so cutesy, is because I'm like, dude, if the whole thing is animated like this, I'd be down. And then it switches over and I'm like, oh, like, are they doing different art styles all the time now? Or nope, this is just what we're going with. All right.
Well, this special also, like, it kind of walks a line between, like, trying to preach certain things and take itself seriously, but also just being completely wacky and not taking itself seriously.
There are a few episodes of the show that take themselves more seriously, like the pilot's one. Or the first episode's one that you saw, just because it has to set up the story.
Yeah.
There's a few other ones. In season 2, there's quite a bit more two-parters. There's one with Tak, who... That's how Dib has a spaceship. There's another Urkin that came to Earth, and she left her spaceship behind. It's a whole thing. It was supposed to be... It came up quite a few times in the second season and was supposed to be like a really big, important plot point if the show had continued, but it didn't. There's continuity nods to the show as well. Of course, in Dib's garage, where he's like, I collected all these things from our adventures. There's like the box of chocolates or whatever from the Girl Scout episode and other stuff like that. Minnie Moose finally gets to do something, which, if you're unfamiliar with the history of Minnie Moose is a character that was not present in the original show, except the most horrible Xmas ever, which is by far like the most broadcast and watched and I guess probably not infamous, but like the most seen episode of Zim, I'd say, just because Nicktoons aired it so many times during the holiday seasons. Many times. Isn't that
one of the last ones?
It is the last episode, yes. But anyway, Minnie Moose is in that one. It was supposed to be a character that just pops up out of nowhere and then continues randomly appearing. And then there was going to be an episode where, like, someone was going to call into attention that Minnie Moose wasn't there, and there was going to be flashbacks with Minnie Moose crudely photoshopped into the other episodes. It was supposed to be a joke with it, but instead it's just Minnie Moose is just there for one episode of the show, and everyone acts like it's always been there. But at least it gets to do something. So in some way, it was resolved here. I was kind of disappointed also that they didn't follow up on really like any plot points from the show. It's not a very story-heavy show, but there are a few things, like there's the Resisti, which is a resistance to the Urkin Empire, that appears in one episode of the show and was supposed to be important, but then never was. They are not like even referenced here. I could understand why they would want to go with something a little more original.
So do you think it should have been more of like a follow-up to the series than just kind of its one-off thing?
Well, see, that's the thing. When you take into consideration the difference in art style, the difference in characterization of a few characters, and the fact that it really doesn't have too much of a connection with the original series, this to me feels like an Invader Zim reboot. Like, it's not. I mean, it does take place in the original continuity, but
it reimagines a lot of elements from the original.
It's and it's softened in such a way that, like, you know when everyone was talking about that Ed and Eddie reboot that wasn't a real thing, but everyone was talking about it.
Yeah,
that's kind of like what I feel like this is. It's like just kind of a much more neutered Zim. Like, I can't imagine Zim stealing people's organs in this TV movie. Like, in the art style and in the tone and in everything. And I'm not saying Invader Zim has to be the darkest of the dark, but like I said, no one dies in this. Where's some offhanded death? Rocco had it. Yeah. Hey Arnold has it. Why doesn't Zim have it? For all its faults, I did enjoy it for what it was. I don't think it did a very great job at being a big flashy reunion special, especially because this was a show that a lot of people were really into.
Yeah.
And definitely had an unfair shake. Well, in some ways, you could also argue that the creator putting subliminal images of one of the characters being bloody just into random frames against Nick's wishes might be like a tad petty.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. As someone who's not too familiar with this show, I can kind of understand why some people would be turned off from it at a first glance because of how grimy everything is and how bleak and depressing things seem. It's far from a very conventional show.
Oh yeah.
So I can understand it from that sense, but from what you were just saying, I'm sure that if you have a certain type of mindset and you go into it with that mindset, then maybe you'll get something out of it.
The show?
Do you think, how did you benefit from watching the show?
Well, it was very, it was very dark. Like, it was very not expected. Even as someone going into it, having, known about episodes like Dark Harvest, there are still things offhandedly that are, like, really freaky. Like, there's an episode where Gaz is waiting in line for a new game console, and this annoying kid in back of her basically steals hers, and she spends the whole episode just tormenting him, eventually leading to him to get into a huge elevator crash at the end of the episode. Originally, it was meant that he was supposed to be dead, but there's like a to be continued light tease at the end, but it doesn't make the episode any less like horrifying. And I like the kind of just gothic feel of it. I like the fact that everyone is an idiot or a jerk or mean in some way. It has a real bite to it that just doesn't exist in children's cartoons, but even in more adult cartoons, I found Invader Zim to be not similar to like Rick and Morty or something. Like, I felt like it has a very unique, distinct style and tone. It very much pushed the envelope on what it was able to get away with, and a lot of the jokes are just like very unexpected and very surreal. And the animation. Okay, something else about the original show is that it is probably the best use of CG in a cartoon I've ever seen. Like a 2D animated cartoon, the integration is phenomenal for what it is.
It's pretty well done.
It's cel shaded, so it blends like perfectly in with the art style and the colors they use, like the Irken ships and sometimes like
even in like the intro.
Yes,
looks nice.
Yes. It
Mini Moose.
You can tell when it is using CG, but it still looks very good.
Yeah.
So what would you like rate Enter the Florpus then?
On like a 1 to 10 scale?
Well, whatever scale you feel like.
And I'm giving Enter the Florpus. No, let's see. I'm not too familiar with the show.
But you don't have to be familiar with. Okay, just as someone who's not familiar with the show, what do you give it?
At a first impressions glance, Enter the Florpus, I will give a 6 out of 10.
Okay. Yeah, I'd probably land somewhere about there, 6 or 7.
So like slightly above average for me.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I mean, it's a novelty. Like, the animation is nice. Even ignoring the changes that it made to the show, it's nice. It's pleasant. It's something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay.
Right. But it's definitely a more softened up version of Zim, and there are just like creative decisions, like focusing so much on Dib, that I'm not as much of a fan of. I would have wanted it to be more half and half with Dib and Zim. It was towards the beginning of the movie, but once Zim takes over, he just sits around for the rest of the movie. Like, he doesn't really do all that much.
So I guess a good word to describe how you feel about it is underwhelmed.
Yeah. See, the crazy thing is, had I not marathoned the show, had I just watched it, I'd be more positive on it than I am now. But because I actually took the time to watch the show, I'm like, well, they changed this, and they changed this, and they changed this, and it all makes it makes the Enter the Florpus looks and feels like something from 2019. Like, how we talked about how Rocco felt like it was like straight out of the 90s?
Right.
Zim doesn't, like, the show feels like it's ahead of its time. The TV movie feels like kind of exactly adequate for the time. I don't feel, no, I really don't feel like this TV movie does anything particularly special. I think it's enjoyable. I think it's pleasant. I think the story is fine. I think the animation is nice. I think some of the jokes work. It's not a very, very funny movie. It's not an ingenious plot or anything. The Florpus itself is neat, but I gotta say, I've seen that concept be done in other shows like Gravity Falls, like the whole different art styles and stuff. Like, it looks cool, but it's definitely not the first time I've seen that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say a 6 or a 7. Yeah. But how does it stack up with the other Nick TV movies? Find out later.
Ooh.
Anything else on Florpus?
No, that about wraps it up.
Okie dokie. All right, so when we come back, we are going to be talking about Hey Arnold, the Journal, and the Jungle Movie. And we're back.
Hey.
The last episode of Hey Arnold, in production intention, the Journal. So in this yeah, it's also a TV movie, I guess you could say.
2-part episode.
Right. Well, 4-part episode if you consider most of them are 11.
Yeah, if you're judging from 15. Yeah, because it's 45 minutes.
TV movie. In this TV movie, Arnold finds a journal from his father, and him and his grandparents read through it to recount the story of Arnold's parents and what they were like and why they're no longer around. And it turns out they were basically humanitarian people who help out in less fortunate regions, and they get mixed up with this tribe of green-eyed people and get married and have Arnold near the green-eyed people, and then they fly back to wherever Arnold's city is and then leave him with their grandparents when these green-eyed people need them for one last job, and then they haven't been seen for 9 years. Da-da-da.
Yeah.
All right, so the Journal is definitely a non-standard episode of Hey Arnold in the sense that it really, Arnold's parents kind of are the main characters of the episode.
Yeah,
I would say
it kind of does the traditional thing of cutting in between the story that's taking place in the past and the people that are telling it in the present.
Yeah, I would say that even though there's a lot of stuff about Arnold's parents, I think it flashed back to like Grandpa and Arnold and his grandma like enough that I didn't feel like I was watching a completely different show. That can happen sometimes when you do episodes that are about just like completely different characters, that it feels like, well, this is no longer Hey Arnold. But I think what's nice about it is that ultimately it still is Hey Arnold, because Hey Arnold is really ultimately a show about a kid helping people. And so to see that his parents were all about helping people, it fits still. It's an interesting parallel.
Yeah.
It also kind of takes like the urban legends of the city that happened in a lot of the show and applied that to like the jungle. I love how the green-eyed people and a lot of stuff around them are handled in the Journal specifically, because it's kind of handled as like legend. You don't see the green-eyed people at all. Not a single reference. Now we know they're real, we know they exist, but we don't know if they're like humanoid or alien or if they're just a normal tribe of people with just green eyes. Like we don't
It's very mysterious.
Right. It's left that kind of like urban legend,
ominous,
type feeling. And there's no magic or anything like that. There's coincidence, certainly, I would say.
Oh yeah.
But no, they kind of leave all that out. And I feel like when really thinking about the Journal, even though it might seem like a very odd place for the series to end on, even though the Jungle movie is supposed to be where the series ended on, and it is where it ends on now, like the Journal kind of does work as a weird series finale in the sense that it gets a lot of cameos from like Arnold's friends at the beginning, has some cameos with people in the city with Arnold's parents when they return to the city.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, and it answers one of the few big questions looming over the series.
And that question is, where did Abner come from?
Right. So yeah, and on the wraparound segment stuff, I gotta say, I don't recall Grandpa being as funny as he is. Grandpa's really funny in the show.
Every story he told Arnold is 100% true.
Well, it's funny because before that I watched the Veterans Day episode where he literally claims he punched Hitler in the face. And that's another episode about Arnold saying that Grandpa's stories aren't true. So there's basis for Arnold to believe that.
It's also a funny kind of contrast because oftentimes the grandparents come off as more immature than Arnold, who's the child, right?
Well, I also watched another episode where Grandpa went back to elementary school and it was in Arnold's class and almost gets expelled for being a rebel. But yes, I think that the Grandpa stuff especially was like needed levity because it is a little more serious, and there is kind of this looming idea that like maybe Arnold's parents are dead. Maybe they died out there. So even though it's kind of a nice it is a nice story and it's nice for Arnold to hear it. It's still like a little more heavy, you know, subject matter wise. So to have repeated jokes about Grandpa having to go to the bathroom all the time, I think was that was good.
That was quite clever too, because the Grandpa Phil, he was like, "Oh, I got to go to the bathroom," and that led to an actual break from the show, and then he comes back, and so that was well done, integrated.
At least two of those commercial breaks are Grandpa going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Do you know who voices Grandpa?
Yeah, isn't it Dan Castellaneta?
Oh yeah, you're right. It is Dan Castellaneta, and his mother's Tress MacNeil, or sorry, his grandmother's Tress MacNeil.
Yeah, Pookie.
Yeah, she's interesting in this as well.
Yeah, it makes you wonder sometimes if her dementia is a serious thing or if they're just playing it off for jokes.
Well, and I think this was an intentional callback, but in both The Journal and The Jungle Movie, there's one line where she's like, "Who is that blonde-haired boy living in our house?"
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that's kind of part of the fun of the character is just that, like, I don't know. When I was younger, my grandparents used to like do stupid jokes and stuff, and I could never tell if they were being serious or not. Growing older, I realized that they probably were not being serious, but as a kid, you kind of have that perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty refreshing portrayal of such youthful and optimistic and lighthearted and funny grandparents, because in some media especially, you see elders as kind of these stubborn people that are just waiting to die.
Willy Wonka.
And
that's like the epitome.
Yeah. So it's really nice to see some grandparents who still have some of their childhood selves left in them.
And I love how much personality Phil has, especially like he inserts himself into the story and he like derails it by like calling himself great and amazing and
oh yeah,
and then
he's a very biased narrator.
And then the person we've all been waiting for arrived, me. I also so here's one of the things about the flashback that get me when they show Phil and Pookie and they show like the borders when Arnold was 1. No one is visibly younger. 9 years have passed and no one looks any younger or older. Even more years for the wedding. Like, I feel like that was a missed opportunity to have like slightly younger designs on some of these people.
That's true. Kind of on that topic, I found it kind of funny that directly after Arnold was born, he has a full head of hair.
Some babies do. Did you not know that?
Well, yeah, but he straight up had like the Arnold hairdo.
Yeah, well,
in baby form.
It kind of makes you wonder if all the volcano running around shenanigans while she was giving birth had anything to do with his football-shaped head.
He's basically Simba. He just kind of pauses nature.
All right, well let's talk about his parents, who are fully fledged characters in this.
Yeah, it's really special when a show can make us feel for and get attached to these characters who we really don't have any knowledge of and are meeting for the first time, and have only ever really kind of heard about in a legendary form.
They do a lot of amazing stunts in the episode, but to me, they don't feel like too perfect. Like his dad is kind of bumbling a bit. And even though they're able to do all these tasks, they only kind of just barely survive a lot of the stuff.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of unrealistic things that happen, but I kind of view it as almost like cinematic homages to something like Indiana Jones, where it's just kind of like all of these outlandish things happen and they're always able to pull out of it.
Right. Well, you also have to remember it's a narration, so who knows how reliable to real fact. But I mean, Arnold's always been about having a little bit of cartoon flexibility in there.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, they survived quite a bit of shenanigans, shall we say. Also interesting for later is that La Sombra, who is the main villain of the Jungle Movie, only appears for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, and he's in costumed form.
For as important as he is, and I mean they mention him a few more times, but having watched the Jungle Movie a few years ago, like without having watched the Journal in ages, I would have imagined that La Sombra was a bigger part of the Journal. But really, the antagonist in the Journal is like nature, basically.
Yeah.
Nature's trying to kill a lot of people in the Journal.
Yeah.
I also love how they constructed a plausible reason for Arnold's parents to be missing that like completely makes sense. It doesn't seem like a cop out, right? Because it'd be very easy to have like this weird excuse, you know, or like, oh well, they went on a business trip and then they never called Arnold ever again. And like this idea that
he went to the gas station to get some milk.
they're doing one last job, but it's not just like for any old reason. It's because they basically owe the Green-Eyed People for Arnold's birth and their survival. Like,
oh yeah.
So it feels understandable why they would go back under that very specific condition.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a very good reason, and I think that makes Arnold's complex feelings about that much more meaningful.
Right.
Because like they said they were going to be back and they never came back. It wasn't like he's there's no closure.
Right. He doesn't know if they're dead or what happened. Also, it's always impressive when a show is able to kind of portray events that happen over the course of like a few years in a reasonable chunk of time. Like in this TV movie, we go from Arnold's parents just meeting, that's the kind of the starting point, to a lot of their misadventures, to Arnold's mother getting pregnant and giving birth, and then they go back to the city, and then we get quite a chunk of time with them in the city, and then we kind of like see the ending of it. So it's like they cover a lot, but it doesn't feel overwhelming or like every scene is like just kind of like completely disconnected from each other. It weaves a nice narrative over the span of multiple years, and we see a lot of really nice interactions between Arnold's parents, which show like why they love each other, why they love Arnold, why they feel indebted to the Green-Eyed People, and who they are. It would be very easy to kind of make them just be like these amazing savior people that just give and give and give and do all these things, but I don't know, I feel like they're written with enough flaw and complexity that it feels like they were extraordinary people, but they still feel like real people despite their stunts, you know?
Yeah, they're a little bit grounded.
I guess maybe my favorite part of this was when they were interacting with baby Arnold in just like
in the park,
right? And how he mentions like, you know, we've been through a lot of adventures, but raising you was like the toughest one. Because Arnold's so feisty.
Yeah.
Well, so we get to see the younger versions of Arnold's friends, because I don't think there was a way around that.
No. It's a spinoff waiting to happen.
Arnold babies. Goo Goo Arnold. Oh no. Do you think Arnold wearing that blue shirt was a reference to Rugrats?
Maybe.
Just a light reference. Maybe.
What did you think of that joke where during the wedding ceremony, one of the indigenous people was reading some sort of transcript and they were taking forever and they kept falling asleep?
I thought that maybe went on a little long, but was still kind of funny.
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit dragged, but yeah, there was still some funny beats to it.
What about Grandpa trying to fillet Abner?
Yeah, the reason why they got Abner was initially to eat him.
Well, we don't know why the Green-Eyed People sent the pig. They just said they send a pig, but not with the intention. Like, who knows? But
he's an old pig.
Yeah, right.
By the present,
right. Also, how did they get a pig into America? I feel like importing an animal.
Aren't there laws against like transporting animals from different countries to protect the ecosystems?
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be the strangest way Abner gets to America in the TV movie about Hey Arnold. Yeah, but we'll get to that.
One thing was that I found kind of weird was, remember how Stella drinks and she's like, that's not sitting well on my stomach, and they go to the health clinic and she walks out and she goes, I'm pregnant, we're going to have a baby.
Yes.
She kind of says it in that tone. It's a little bit monotone. Like you'd expect them to be a little bit more ecstatic about having a child.
Well, it was unplanned, so maybe she didn't want a child at that moment, monsters.
I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby.
I also like that apparently Arnold's dad, like, journaled about their amazing honeymoon. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
And that was, like, a good moment that I definitely did not get the first time I watched that, when I was, like, probably like 9 myself, right. But now it's kind of like a funny thing where it's like, yeah.
I don't know to assume, because I probably shouldn't, but I did find it kind of odd that Eduardo kept slipping in and out of Spanish, like how he'd say like, look, an earthquake, and then he'd say like the Spanish term for an earthquake, or like how he'd say like, come with me, my amigos.
You gotta remember,
like,
Monsters, Dora the Explorer was very big around this time.
Yeah, 2002. Yeah, that's about right. I was just
I'm
because,
just
like, I
joking.
don't know. I know some people from Mexico, and usually they kind of stick to one dialect or the other. They don't really mix them.
I mean,
I don't know.
I would assume that it's just kind of like a device in film and TV where we need to know that he is
Yeah.
bilingual, but we don't want to
Yeah.
do subtitles all the time, so it's have him say some words in Spanish or repeat it,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah, that
hey,
makes
it's
sense.
slightly educational for kids.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't know what a corazon is, right?
Yeah.
I love those at Italian restaurants. uh,
At the beginning, where Arnold was just depressed and he was sitting on the stoop, and there's like a little boat floating alongside the street. It reminded me of It.
That's a
You know that part where there's a little paper boat that's floating along the street?
right. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, this being the series finale for a while was kind of weird because it didn't resolve things with like Helga, and it is still weird to have like Gerald not be any part of it, or just a very small part of it. It does feel like it needed the part two, but I guess to also be fair, there is the actual theatrical movie that did happen, and that is a very much more like Arnold and Gerald and Helga's story.
Yeah, it's a little bit more faithful to like the overall show.
Right. Again, haven't seen it in literally probably a decade, so I couldn't
here.
tell you if the critical consensus at the time is how I feel, but I'm just gonna go ahead and assume that it probably is. Which is to say, it didn't do well. I really like the journal, honestly. It is kind of a non-standard episode for Hey Arnold, but like I said, I feel like it carried enough themes of what the show is, but did it in like a jungle setting, which is very different for the show. And
Yeah.
it answered like an important question, and it just, I don't know, it just really flowed very nicely. The cutting back to Arnold and Grandpa and stuff, like there was always kind of a nice punchy gag to get us out or to get us back in and to break up the story a little bit. And it was compelling, I would say, which is not the easiest thing in the world to do with new characters.
100%. I think this episode has a great plot structure. And overall, I really appreciate Hey Arnold and enjoy it a lot. It's personally one of my favorite Nicktoons from the 90s. And one of the reasons I love it so much is because of how atmospheric it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because in many instances, I mean, this episode has some pretty tense sequences, but the show tends to be slow paced at times. But I think that's perfectly okay because it kind of immerses you into the setting, and there's a lot of visual storytelling, just kind of sitting there in the moment, characters reacting to certain things and having a certain face and looking a certain way, and it conveys a lot to you and how they're feeling. And of course, the jazz music is complete vibes. I think it supplements the setting super well. And Hey Arnold is especially really good at doing sunsets.
Oh yeah,
they did like 5 different sunsets during the wedding, and all of them were great to look at.
And the note of the soundtrack, this episode has a little bit of a different soundtrack.
Yeah, definitely some different choices for the flashback scenes.
Right, but it's still kind of familiar riffs, just done with different instruments to give a more jungle vibe, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of an urban jungle vibe. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, I watched a few random episodes of Hey Arnold just before this, just to kind of get myself back into the show. And really, there's 2 different kinds of Hey Arnold episodes. There's episodes like the Journal, there's the Christmas episode, there's things like that, and then there's also episodes where Phoebe farts. Which, by the way, was the last aired episode. So,
oh wow,
yeah, there you go. There are some episodes that are very, very goofy and very like non-meaningful. And I don't mean to look down on it, but I think if you were to watch like, that episode or the other such kind of fluff episodes, you might get the wrong impression of what the show is. But the Christmas special is lauded as like one of the best Nicktoons Christmas specials, if not the best.
Oh yeah.
To a lot of people, I think it is the best. Not me though. So I'll be honest with you, although it does kind of feel like, I mean, there certainly is a sequel hook at the end with the map. I think I was kind of okay with this being the end of Hey Arnold. Like, I didn't feel like, I don't know. I guess when I was younger, I couldn't really picture what the Jungle movie would be like.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been very much out of the show's element.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
All right, we can move on to the Jungle movie. So, the Jungle movie is about Arnold winning a trip to San Lorenzo, the place where his parents were last seen. and coincidentally running into his parents' friend, who leads him towards where the green-eyed people are. But surprise, it's La Sombra, the bad guy, who kidnaps Arnold and his friends and then lets Arnold lead him right to the green-eyed people. They deal with the bad guy, and then Arnold saves the day via aromatic things.
Via some Febreze.
Yup.
If there's anything the green-eyed people are good at, it's engineering ventilation and piping systems to circulate some Febreze around their area to wake up people from a 10-year sleeping sickness.
Let's not use that for where the farms are or anything. What use would that be, right? Okay, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. For the first thing I have to say, Monsters, and I mean this in all sincerity, I'm pretty sure when I watched this for the original time, I missed scenes. I think.
Really?
Yeah, I think because remember how, well, off recording, I kept mentioning how, like, it was supposed to be 2 hours long, and it wasn't that long. Even though it is with commercials, essentially. I think I watched it on Nick.com after it aired, and I think this was around the time when Nick.com's video player had that stupid issue where sometimes it would skip ahead a whole commercial. Like, it would come back from commercial break, but come back at the wrong commercial break. Because there's, like, a little bit of Arnold and Helga, like, in the boat and stuff that I don't remember. And there's also a chunk towards the beginning, like, when Helga's getting her videotapes and stuff together. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't have any remembrance of those scenes. So I just kind of want to put that out there right now that, like, that TV log that I did a while ago is much less complete, I think, than this discussion is about to be. I have to say that the first maybe like 20 minutes of this movie, before they get to San Lorenzo, I would say that everything is perfect. I think they nailed it.
Oh yeah, it's such a love letter to the original. In the montage that they make for Arnold and all of the characters and nods.
Mr. Irwin's daughter is referenced for the only time outside of the Christmas episode. Yeah, so many times that Arnold's helped people and things, like the turtle, when the turtle actually decides to show up. I don't know how they found that turtle, but...
The Birdman, who everyone assumed died.
Yep, take that, people who made YouTube videos.
Take that, theorists.
Yeah, it's like just tons of references to that, and like I love the fact that it's like Helga's stalking is what enabled all of these recordings to happen.
Yeah.
She's got like a database.
Wait, where did you get those tapes from?
Yep.
Wait, you put a camera in his room?
Yeah, like all that was great. There's great moments with like individual characters, and I gotta say, the updated character designs with the shading and everything, they look so good. So
they look
good.
Really good.
Fantastic, I would say. The little changes and stuff, it looks good. And I mean, this looks like it had a nice budget behind it, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. I will say, though, that some of the CGI integration was very noticeable.
Yes. In particular, towards the end, where they do a 360 shot.
The temple.
Yeah, that looked like a bad CG shot, unfortunately. But, like, on that note, there is also a lot of pretty ambitious cinematography throughout the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in, like, the final confrontation with La Sombra, there's a lot of, like, POV shots and angles and all sorts of stuff. It makes sense because Craig Bartlett has been working on ideas for this movie since Hey Arnold went off the air.
Yeah, so probably close to 2 decades.
Yes.
Longer than Arnold's parents were missing.
Right. Like, oh, that's a good point. But like, you know, so it's very understandable why a lot of those details and a lot of these things are like very well hammered out. And yeah, like in that beginning bit, it is so much of a love letter to the show, and it is so much like, yes, the characters are going to leave the city, the central setting of the show in like 98% of the episodes, and go off into the journal. And yes, a lot of the story is going to go from a kid that just like helps people with everyday problems into prophecy stuff, which we'll get to. But I think that the beginning was enough. That to me felt like the reunion part of this, because there had to be it. Even though this was planned to just be a straight up follow up for 20 years, it is nice that they still said, okay, wait, let's take a step back. Let's reintroduce the world to these characters who we haven't seen in almost a decade or almost 2 decades, and let's reintroduce them and let's set everything up.
Yeah, and the changes that they do make are extremely subtle. They also, in addition to updating some of the character designs, they also integrate a little bit of modern technology.
Right.
But it's not too distracting.
No. So, I mean, it's funny because beepers are still referenced. I think a boring thing that they could have done was just retconned it so that Bob had always sold cell phones. But I think that would have been a boring change. I like the fact that Bob is just still selling beepers, and that it's pointed out that no one uses beepers outside of doctors who do use beepers. But but yeah, like, I like that fact, and it makes sense that Rhonda would be so obsessed with taking pictures of herself and all that. But otherwise, it's in completely non-invasive ways. It's not like a central part of the plot about the cell phones, and it's not like too jarring. Like, I see people online talk about how, like, oh, well, how does it make sense that there's beepers and it was the 90s and now it's and it's like, who cares? Like, there has to be something done, unless they can't go in real time, or else Arnold would be like 29 or whatever.
Yeah, it's a cartoon.
There you go, monsters. Okay, so then the gang takes a trip to San Lorenzo,
where they magically run into La Sombra.
Well, not so magically, because as it turns out that the whole trip to this place was a trap by La Sombra, which I thought that was a nice plot detail, because otherwise this would have been a really stupid coincidence movie. Like,
yeah, because they also happen to go to, like, pretty much. I'm pretty sure San Lorenzo is like an entire territory. It's not just like a city or like close region.
Right.
So they just happen to go to, like, the same proximity where his parents were. And
I should also point out that during the beginning, Arnold sees the same slide that he slid down in the journal. Did you catch that?
Oh, I didn't notice that.
When Arnold's at the playground and he sees, like, the loving parents chasing their kid, he looks over at a slide, and it's the same slide.
Well, I did notice the connection, because the same thing happens in the journal where he notices, like, 2 parents with their kid when he's sitting on the stoop.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of parallels. Both of these begin with a fantasy sequence. The first one with Arnold on a boat fighting off pirates, which also happens in the Jungle movie.
Yeah,
and then the Jungle movie starts off with this like this plane sequence, right? Where Arnold kind of journeys into San Lorenzo and rescues his parents in a very, like, fantastical way.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'll throw this out there. I think the Green-Eyed People kind of looked like Matt Groening characters.
They looked like Phineas and Ferb characters to me.
To me, they looked like straight out of Futurama.
Yeah, okay, so I said this when I initially talked about this movie, and I mentioned it earlier, but just, like, I am so strongly against the idea that, like, there's a prophecy involved with Arnold and he's, like, a savior of the Green-Eyed People, and, like, it's this huge thing and only he can use the magical eyeglass thing with the journal that his father somehow wrote with this magical thing and built into it. I think that's so stupid. I think that's such a complete wrong twisting of what Arnold is. He's a good-natured kid that could be anyone. Yes, he solves an inhumanly large amount of problems over the course of the show, but I think saying that, like, he is a literal...
This movie makes him like a religious prophet.
Right, he's a messiah, and it's like, in the journal, yes, okay, they do have this piece where his birth stops the volcano, but it's just kind of like this interesting poetic thing, and like, it's it's extreme coincidence or magic or whatever you want to say, but it's not really explicitly magic. Whereas, I don't know, in the Jungle movie, they lean really hard into it, and it just kind of makes me uncomfortable because I just feel like it retcons Arnold into being a pseudo god.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, too, the Green-Eyed People reveal themselves pretty willingly.
Yeah, because they think that they literally treat him like a savior, even though he's done nothing for them at that point.
Yeah.
I would say that is probably my least favorite part of the movie. And I mean, honestly, like, some of the stuff falls apart. Like, a lot of the stuff is kind of predictable. As soon as they're talking about a cortisone, I kind of made the immediate connection with Helga's necklace.
And to think this entire story wouldn't have wrapped up if it weren't for Brainy and his creepiness.
Right. Right. That the fact that Eduardo wasn't really Eduardo was also kind of obvious, considering they keep obscuring his picture.
I noticed that from a mile away.
Like, it's not necessarily obvious that it's La Sombra, but considering there's like no one else in this story, it's kind of obvious it's La Sombra.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the end they say that they have to use gold to activate this machine. Why gold? I have no idea. Like, no reason. They built this machine in this really stupid, obtuse way. I guess. I don't know. But the antidote is just sitting on the machinery. Couldn't Arnold's parents have just taken it and like given it to themselves?
Yeah, can't you just like take some compressed air
Does it,
or something?
Did it need to be in like rain form?
Get like a hairdryer or something?
Yeah, like no, but like seriously, like why couldn't? And how did this happen? How did Arnold's parents fall down to the sickness? Like, when did this happen? 9 years ago? Like, right when they got there? Or how are their bodies not atrophied? That's cartoon. Fine. Whatever.
Yeah, like, who's feeding them? Also, like, why doesn't, like, UNICEF know about this? Why aren't there people trying to research this?
Well, because it's said that these people don't even exist, really. But why? Also, why did it not affect the kids?
Yeah.
When you get down to
it's like
it,
the Jimmy Neutron movie.
there's just so many questions that are just like, how did this happen? How did the antidote get placed on this thing? But then they couldn't find the Corazon, and so they just gave up and went to sleep, I guess. Like,
also, La Sombra gets struck in the head by an arrow, but like, and also like falls off a cliff, but still survives, and then tries to take a few more punches and then dies. Finally.
But I liked La Sombra though. I think La Sombra actually made for a decent villain, in part because of how casually he murders his crew. Like, that's so surprising that just like
Ruthless.
Yeah, and they're not even like implied deaths. It's just like the first guy takes a bunch of arrows and he just kind of throws them aside. The second guy falls down a giant pit, and then the rest of the crew gets crushed by a bunch of rocks. You can hear them moaning at the end, but like, they did not make it out of that rubble. Yeah, like La Sombra is brutal, and he tricks them too. He doesn't even like, ooh.
Yeah, he's just kind of, he baits them. He's like, here, test these booby traps before I do.
I like how he survives. He in like a cartoon way, of course he survives by grabbing onto a rope that's just somehow miraculously where he needs it to be while he's poisoned.
And then he gets like a green skin tint.
But that's cool. And oh god, come on. You got to admit the line that like, you know, he died as he lived with poison inside him. Like, that's pretty cool. I don't know. It's kind of corny, but I thought it was kind of cool.
How did you feel about all of like Arnold's friends and schoolmates locked up?
How did I feel about them being pretty useless during this entire thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like. What was the point? No, I get the point of having them because it's a reunion movie and like you gotta have them, and it's a
more screen
school
time.
field trip. But it feels like they should have just done more because really they didn't do anything. I mean, they escaped, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know what you could have done with them though, because there's so many of them.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Also, Arnold apparently just did not care that his pet pig went missing in this foreign country. There's no care given in the world about like, hey, where did my pig go? Like, for a pig that literally was like basically all he has left of his parents, Arnold sure as heck didn't care that it flew back to America. Also, this pig flew back to America.
Yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous that a pig is able to attach itself to landing gear and and do all this stuff. I think that kind of just adds to Abner's charm, or like charisma.
It bothers me. It's a level of like cartoon unrealism that it just went too far for me personally, but it's also a cartoon, so I get it. But it's also weird too because it's like it's unnecessary because they already sent a message to Bob. Also, like, Pookie is able to understand Abner, and there's just a lot of really weird stuff with that.
Yeah.
Another thing that I really did not like was Arnold's parents in this movie. What is wrong with them? Did they suffer brain damage while they had the sleeping sickness? They have no personality anymore. They wake up and they're just like, oh, hey, Arnold. And then they say, hey, Arnold, like 3 more times in the end of this thing. And that's basically all their lines.
Yeah, they try to scoot in the phrase, hey, Arnold, wherever they possibly can.
Yeah, but his parents specifically say it at least twice, if not 3 times. And also like the whole following him to school and they're like, Oh, you have school. When are you going to get out? 3. Okay, we'll be right here waiting. They came off as creepy. You know what? Here's Pieguy theory. Ready? It was all a dream. Arnold's now just hallucinating that his parents are these messianical figures that are always smiling at him and can do no wrong. He lost it.
Yeah, it's just an extended flashback or like dream sequence.
Yeah. Hey, the movie ends with like a dream sequence fake out. So how do I know it was a fake out? His parents are just weird, and they had personalities in the journal, and then they don't anymore. Ooh.
Yeah, you're totally right about like the no personality thing, because like literally they missed out on their entire child's like development, and like they don't seem inquisitive at all. They're just like, oh hey.
They're not even surprised that he's there. They're just like, hey Arnold. Like there's no moment of like, by God, have I lost out on my child's childhood? No, it's just happy ending, yay.
Yeah, and then they do the tease thing too, where like Arnold's walking downstairs for breakfast, and he's like, "Oh, they're gone again," and then they pop out of the kitchen.
For considering the whole movie was about rescuing them, you couldn't have given them like one line or like one thing to do. Like maybe have Arnold's parents finish off La Sombra or something. Wouldn't that have been more meaningful?
Yeah.
Also, on that moment of La Sombra, how about that like artifact thing rolling off the hill, even though it has like a distinct like kickstand on it? It's not a round object except for like the thing sticking out of it, but the CGI has it like rolling perfectly down the hill. It's weird.
Physics.
Bad CG. How'd you feel about Arnold and Helga?
I mean, I liked the confrontation at first, where it's like she tried and then it got ruined by the pirates.
Mm-hmm.
The Corazon thing at the end, where she used her own Arnold amulet, that was very sappy.
Yeah.
It did feel a little forced. I wish that it was a little bit more mutual, because Arnold just kind of does it out of nowhere.
I thought that in the first viewing, and I would have liked maybe like a little bit more from Arnold. But I will say, I think for Arnold, the fact that Helga did all of this stuff for him, basically risked her life multiple times, does kind of show that despite her talk, like her actions speak louder than that. It's like it's not super obvious, and it could have used more work, I think. I know they kiss in the movie, so I also don't know how that ties into things, but it does kind of feel like Arnold's very oblivious at times in the show to it, even though Helga is not subtle in the slightest. But I liked the kiss, and I liked what Arnold had to say. I didn't really like the reset button at the end. I thought that was kind of just like, just give it a break. You know, if you're gonna still have her be a jerk, at a certain point, it's just like really just awful. Like, you know, she doesn't. You feel for Helga because she has a bad family, like a horrible family, and she's clearly still a kid and trying to figure all this out, and she masks it with anger and all that stuff. But it's like at a certain point, she confessed, and Arnold like kind of gave mutual feelings, and yet she still has to be mean to him. Like at that point, it's just like.
This is also an extreme nitpick, but you could tell that Helga's voice actress was the original. There were certainly times where she had like a bit of a deep voice, but I will say that Arnold's voice actor for this movie was really good, and
he was
even in the
spot on.
journal. Like I know that in the original he went through like 5 different voice actors, and in the journal I remember him particularly having a bit of a high pitched voice than usual. But no, the Jungle Movie voice actor did a great job.
Mm-hmm. I agree. The Jungle Movie, they did a really great job. Now, the journal, so the last Arnold, before the Jungle Movie Arnold, only played Arnold in, like, April Fool's, the journal, and, like, one other episode. Only in, like, the last 3 produced episodes.
And probably the movie, too.
Yeah. If not an entirely different person, maybe. But so he didn't really have a ton of time to develop the voice and stuff. And so he's definitely not the voice that you'd probably be most familiar with. Probably the second voice of Arnold would be the most familiar one, maybe. But Gerald was a bit different. I think he did like an all right job, but
yeah, they got one of the kids from.
Is that Benjamin Flores? What's his face? It is.
I think he's from Game Shakers.
Yeah, he was also in something else before Game Shakers. How do you feel about the name, The Jungle Movie?
It's to the point.
It was kind of forced it was forced on this project because it was tentatively known as, well, it was going to be the Hey Arnold movie in theatrics, so presumably it would have just been called the Hey Arnold movie, but then there was a Hey Arnold movie that wasn't the Jungle Movie, so in
That was like the code name, the Jungle Movie.
Right. But it was so well known as that in the fandoms for so long that I don't know. I guess they just kind of had to title it that. It's not a great title, but I guess it's to the point.
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like I'd prefer like Hey Arnold the Jungle Movie over like Hey Arnold Journey to San Lorenzo or something.
And also, there is kind of something nice that the Jungle Movie sounds a little like the Journal, the Jungle, the Journal. It's like poetry.
A little bit of alliteration.
Yeah. We got a viewer comment from Welcome to the Dump who says, I kind of liked the Journal more than the Jungle Movie. The Jungle Movie was pretty bland during most of it, but there are some parts I really enjoyed. I liked the scene with Arnold finally reuniting with his parents and Helga confessing her feelings to Arnold. I also found it pretty clever that they used her locket as key to the cure. Arnold's parents themselves don't really have much going for them in the movie. In the Journal, I got much more of a feel for what their characters were meant to be like. I just wish we could have gotten more of that in the movie. Also, the rest of the students easily could have been removed from the film and very little would change. I feel like instead of a school trip, it should have been a giveaway for a free vacation and the winner can bring their family along with 2 friends. That way you can still have Arnold, Helga, and Gerald in the same location and you can give the grandparents a much larger role to play. I agree with most of that. I think that the plot device of field trip or some sort of trip based upon like good deeds as a mask of like this humanitarian group, like I thought that was very clever, but
yeah,
bringing along the whole student body, it just, I don't know, I guess, you do kind of get a good amount of them in the very beginning of this, and there might have been more time for a little more development on the romance between Helga and Arnold.
Well, that whole sequence where like Arnold and Gerald build that thing and then it breaks and then Helga, like with her creepy stalker behavior, sees Arnold all sad. That was a pretty touching moment where she felt inclined to do something so that he could have this opportunity.
Right. But I think there could have been maybe a little more of a back and forth between the two of them. I will say I was not a fan of everyone turning on Arnold. Like, I get it. I get why. Arnold did hide information, but like the plot point of how him and Gerald tell each other everything and then Arnold didn't tell him this one thing, that feels really forced, like not developed at all.
Yeah.
It makes sense, but it feels like there were scenes cut with Gerald or like something. There was supposed to be more to it. And then with the rest of the class turning on Arnold, it's just kind of like obligatory, like everyone turns on the main character. And I mean, yeah, Arnold should have been forthcoming that like, hey, my parents live here, and while we're here, I'm going to make an attempt to find them. But like,
if I were one of those kids, I mean, who knows what these cartoon characters are thinking? I don't know if they're too complex, but I would be quite sympathetic.
Well, realistically, Arnold telling them wouldn't have changed anything. They were still attacked by the quote unquote pirates. La Sombra was already like in charge of their ship. If Arnold had told them, what would that have really changed? And I don't know, but I get it. I get what they were going for. I just feel like they could have nailed it in a little better, or not have the stupid, annoying plot cliche of everyone turns against the hero.
Yeah.
Gerald definitely could have had more to do in the movie, and
he's just kind of the wingman, and he's just kind of there for that purpose.
Yeah, they just kind of half-baked a plot point in with him and Arnold not telling each other. It doesn't really resolve in any way. I don't know, like it could have been resolved. Maybe Arnold tells Gerald that him and Helga kissed, and like he's like, but you can't tell anyone, and so then that's like a new secret that binds their friendship or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Phoebe was nice in the movie. I will say she had a decent amount of lines. She did a good job as like Helga's usual sidekick, and it was cute seeing her and Gerald.
Yeah, and what else did she do? Like make a device out of a cell phone
and a bunch of beepers. Yeah, and she did.
Yeah,
she didn't even fart. This also might be like the most that Nadine ever does in the entire series.
Yeah,
she's the bug girl if you don't remember who Nadine is, and I would not blame you.
I really like the kid with the allergies. What's his name? Like Carl?
Eugene.
You
forgot Eugene's name?
Sorry,
Carl.
I forget that. I think the reason I said Carl is because he has orange hair. Yeah,
and he looks like Carl when he's got an allergic reaction.
Turns into what's her name?
Veruca.
Veruca.
Yeah. Oh, no, Violet. It's Violet.
Violet.
Yeah. You're turning Violet. How about classic jokes about Harold having to use the bathroom all the time? Which did you like better? Grandpa's jokes about having to use the bathroom all the time in the journal, or Harold having to use the bathroom all the time in the Jungle movie? I like Grandpa's. Oh, there was a really great line towards the beginning of the movie where it's off screen, but it's on the video they made, where Harold's like, "Before I met Arnold, I was a one-dimensional bully."
Oh, right, yeah.
But
That's pretty
Arnold
good.
brought out my sensitive side, because in the pilot and the episode that was adapted from the pilot, Harold was just like bully character. He was someone. It's not dissimilar to what happened with Buford on Phineas and Ferb. Very similar, in fact. But that's the famous like Arnold crazy thing, which I think there's not a clip of, but a recreation of in the slideshow of the movie. That was nice too. I like how they faithfully reanimated and redrew classic scenes from the show, pretty much spot for spot. Like, because it would have looked a little weird to see this kind of 90s animation in the middle of. Yeah. Lila was noticeably not in this movie, aside from very beginning. Is she not in their class? Like, I mean, I think maybe it's also just that her character is completely awful. She's annoying. She's like a one-note love interest, but she also speaks in this way that is ever so annoying. "Oh, Arnold, I could never talk to you like this, because that would be just ever so obnoxious."
Isn't there an episode where they get married, like, in the future?
Maybe. There's a fantasy sequence where Arnold and Helga get married.
We got a lot of Olga.
We do. She's there. She doesn't really do much.
The chaperone.
Yeah. But I guess Olga's always got to be there to remind us just how horrible Helga's life is.
Yeah.
So the Jungle movie in general, I will say, I think it gets worse as it goes on. But, you know, I really did enjoy the going back and seeing Arnold and everyone. I enjoyed the updates they made to it. And even though the plot definitely could have used maybe another 20 years of ironing out some of the kinks, I think it still does what it needs to do. Yes, it has some problems, especially if you look at it very closely. I think it has a few big problems in regards to Arnold being a messiah, but it still kind of gets the job done. It is a kind of more grandiose plot.
Yeah, do you think it deserves, like, an 80-minute duration? Because, like, to put that into perspective, Static Cling was, like, 45.
Yeah, Static Cling was the shortest of all three. Yeah, no, I think it could have been shorter, but I didn't hate how long it was, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it was pretty appropriately paced.
Yeah. I don't know, what did you think? Do you agree that it kind of gets worse as it goes on, or what?
Yeah, the ending feels a little bit unsatisfactory.
Yeah.
It's good to have closure, but it's just, you know, you kind of expect more from this thing that you've been waiting for and building up to for such a long time.
They could have had like a scene with Arnold and his parents on a plane, or like the gang leaving. Like, how did they get out of where they were and all that? Like,
yeah,
there could have been a scene of that. Like the dream fake out was not necessary. I don't think that was like a big clever thing. I don't think anyone would fall for that, to be honest. That seems like a very, very kind of like base level. Was it all just a dream?
I do think that they should have spent more time with the parents. That could have improved the movie a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think take out Arnold's classmates, front load them in the beginning. Have even more of them in the beginning. Maybe take out, I don't know, a little more of the Monkey Man stuff or whatever. Maybe even make it half and half. Maybe he spends the first half in the city. But yeah, I do think that getting Arnold and his parents reunited and kind of having it be a proper family adventure would have been more satisfying, because they do feel like just this MacGuffin, really.
Yeah, and you're totally right where it feels like they don't have any personality, and it's kind of not cool when, we have this episode, The Journal, that makes them out to be these larger than life people who are super kind and generous and
flawed, in some ways.
Yeah, partially flawed, but just really remarkable people. And basically all they do in this movie is act like stone walls, wake up and then just wonder when Arnold's getting back from school.
I think it was just trying to be such a sweet, sappy, happy ending that they overshot it and landed in creepy territory. Arnold's parents are actually La Sombra in disguise. That's Hey Arnold.
He's still looking for the Corazon.
Hey Arnold, the city movie coming in 2037.
Well, I was thinking, like, clearly people aged while they were in the sleeping sickness, because, you know, you can see that
The gray hair.
Yeah, they have gray streaks. But, like, what if, and obviously this didn't happen to Arnold's parents, but, like, what if one of the green-eyed people's kids, like what if like one of their parents just so happened to die while they were while they were like in the sleep sickness mode, and they just didn't wake up?
On that note, another callback to the journal, the butterflies, which you wouldn't know unless you watched the journal, but that the sleeping sickness affected the butterflies, and that's what they tested it on. And so it's not just like a pretty visual for no reason. It's that the butterflies also fell ill, and they're a sign that like things are better when you see the butterflies start to fly again. Yeah, which is really nice. Like, I thought that was a really nice, subtle thing. Also, like I said, the slide. There's also Arnold fighting pirates with his parents in the journal. There's I'm sure there's other things that I'm not thinking of at the moment, but there are little nods, and I think you need to see the journal before seeing the Jungle Movie, really, especially because the Jungle Movie doesn't make Arnold's parents that interesting. So the journal kind of needs to be there for like proper motivation and proper like, yeah, like I think, you know, if this had been the theatrical movie that came out in like 2004 or whatever, I think it probably also would have bombed, just because a lot of people probably would have went to see it without seeing the journal, like this one specific episode of the show, and maybe been wondering a lot of things.
Yeah.
Comparison wise,
there's dream sequences. There's Arnold having feelings of abandonment and feeling lonely without his parents.
I feel like in some ways the journal would have been more impactful if the Jungle Movie never happened. I know that's like a weird feeling, but I kind of like yes, okay, so it's teased at the end, the cliffhanger with the map, but if you ignore that, or if you just kind of see it as like a little hope spot for Arnold, the journal kind of gives a more relatable picture of what happened to his parents. Like, okay, so, you know, your parents or my parents or whoever's parents probably aren't adventurers, and the reason that you know, they're not around is probably not because like they're off saving some mystical people.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, they are missing parents in their lives for one reason or another, and they can kind of empathize with Arnold. And, you know, a lot of people don't get that magical happy ending that your parents were just sleeping for 9 years. Like,
yeah,
it is the journal feels a little more impactful in that way that, like, I mean, there's also the subtext that Grandpa makes up all these stories. So what if Grandpa made up the whole thing?
Cartoon conspiracy.
I mean, it wouldn't really be that like out of the ordinary. Like, if Arnold's parents had died or like done something awful, would Grandpa have told Arnold? Probably not.
Like, how would you react if at the end of the movie it's just like it pushes out and it's his grandpa closing the journal and he just like chuckles for a few seconds and then has like a quippy punchliner or a one-liner.
Oh no!
And then that's like the end.
Yeah. Like, you cut to outside and it's like a guy that is kind of like schlubby and like fat and unappealing, and he's blonde and he kind of looks a little like Arnold, and he yells up and he's like, "Dad, can I see Arnold now?" And then Phil's like, "Go away, you bum." Yeah, so okay, so I do kind of feel like the journal hits on that more realistic note, even though of course it is still a very fantasy based story, whereas the Jungle Movie is pure fantasy.
The Jungle Book, or the Jungle Book, the Jungle Movie is basically
continue.
I want to be like you. The Jungle Movie is basically just an imagining of the best possible scenario.
Yeah.
For Arnold to get, so in some ways, because that is the case, it feels like it's missing something.
It kind of feels like it's missing the possibility that Arnold's parents could be dead, because at no point does it really feel like he's not gonna find them. You know, in a lot of movies that do something like what Hey Arnold does, where you're searching for a missing person, like, I don't know, Nemo. There's this moment where the characters give up, you know, where there's this very real presentation that, like, well, whoever you're looking for is probably, you're never gonna find them, or they're dead.
Acceptance.
Right.
Yeah.
There's this moment, and kind of like the heroes have to get over that moment, whether it be accepting it or just like denying it. But that's kind of like a real thing. But nowhere in the Jungle Movie is Arnold like, oh, my parents could really be gone. Like, his grandparents kind of mention like it's probably a bad idea, because they almost certainly think that his parents are dead.
Yeah.
But there's not like this climax where like Arnold finds like, you know, another journal by his dad, which like mentions that they're in grave danger, and, you know, they see bones nearby. Like, you know what I mean? Like something that kind of presents the very real possibility. I don't know. It felt to me like this whole thing was this, like this wish fulfillment fantasy thing of, he's going to find his parents and they're going to have a miraculous happy ending. And then they do. And then, okay, like where's the emotional stakes in that? Where's the, like a lot of the journal is kind of like waiting for like, well, what's the reason why, you know, what happened? Like I was on the edge of my seat with the journal, where in the Jungle Movie, I kind of felt like I knew a lot of the things that was going to happen. And it's even worse for a lot of people who are Hey Arnold fans, because apparently like a lot of the ideas for the Jungle Movie had been put online by Craig Bartlett, because no one thought this thing was ever going to happen.
Yeah. It also, since this takes place like 10 years after the sleeping sickness thing and the disappearance of Arnold's parents, it makes me wonder why La Sombra, within a decade span, still like wasn't able to locate the green-eyed people. Because like Arnold finds it relatively easy, but isn't he also led there?
He uses the book and then also the thing that La Sombra gave him, which again, like it's not explained.
Right.
Like, how did Arnold's dad put these markings in the book, and like this mysterious artifact? And I mean, you could infer that like the green-eyed people helped him put it in there, and the artifact was like, how did La Sombra get the artifact? Or he got it from Edward, I think. I don't know. There's just like a lot of details in the plan that just don't really add up. And
yeah, when you have such an ambitious story from such like a grounded cartoon, you have to make sure that everything kind of connects.
Yeah. I mean, the individual details aren't as important as the big picture, and
yeah, it is kind of nitpicking.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I mean, so along those lines, I will say that although I was very happy to have that nice bit of like fan servicey stuff at the beginning of the Jungle Movie, I will say ultimately I think the Journal is the better TV movie.
I agree, and even though the Jungle Movie does a lot more fan servicey things and tries to celebrate Hey Arnold obviously more than the Journal is very much its own thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, there's just something that feels like spiritually it just feels more in tune with Hey Arnold.
Right, right.
Because it is like people trying to help other people, and it captures the spirit of the show.
Yeah, I mean, in the Jungle Movie, Arnold does help the people, but not through realistic means, through like, oh, well, his friend had a gold-plated heart that they can pop in this machine, and then that magically solves everything.
Basically, the entire time in the Jungle Movie, when they're in San Lorenzo, to me, it almost felt like a different show or like a different franchise, but with Hey Arnold characters placed in it.
Yeah, like when the Rugrats were placed into a jungle in the wild thornberries.
When they went wild?
Yeah, just as one random example. But yeah, no, I feel, ironically, the Journal feels like more self-contained in a way, despite it having a cliffhanger. It feels like a more complete story on its own. I didn't have any nitpicks in the Journal, like, you know, story-wise at least. And yeah, I mean, it is a weird episode to kind of be the franchise series finale for a little bit, ignoring the regular movie. But I don't know. It does just fit Hey Arnold, and it does feel more ambitious, and I'm biased, but it feels more real to me than the Jungle Movie does. And I know as an adult, I'm biased towards like, I like stories that have that bit of grounding in them, and I like stories that have parallels with real life, and I like that stuff. The Jungle Movie just didn't really have that, and so yeah, I enjoyed the Jungle Movie. I definitely liked it more this time after having just watched the Journal than I did on my first watch, and like I said, getting scenes that I may have missed the first time. But I do still feel like the Journal does win out.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, we're going to actually now just very briefly kind of compare the 3 Nickelodeon TV reunion movie specials. Of the 3, I think I can guess. I mean, I think both of our favorites is Rocco, right? Just all around.
Easy.
Yeah. In the sense that I just didn't have really complaints with Rocco. And I think of the 3 of them, Rocco changed the absolute least. I mean, it still had a more impressive art style, but it was very, very true to what the original was.
It's the most faithful.
Right. You know, and it also...
It's about change, yet it remains mostly the most unchanged.
Well, and ironically, it's also the least ambitious in terms of story, not in terms of, you know.
Yeah, because it's still like the same shtick of the show, but with different variables.
Right. And I mean, it's ambitious in that it covers issues that a lot of shows wouldn't cover, but it's, you know, story-wise, it still does the Rocco thing of kind of middling around and having weird, goofy things like drones carrying the characters around the globe, and like, it's not a story to be taken entirely seriously. So I feel like, weirdly enough, that kind of helped it become the best, because it didn't need to hold up to such scrutiny. I think of the 3, my second favorite was probably the Jungle Movie.
I also agree with that.
I mean, we talked about it, but I feel like the Jungle Movie was... I mean, it felt a little unfaithful to the show in the sense that it made Arnold Messiah and all this stuff, but like, it also was very faithful in the beginning, and in a lot of ways it is still pretty faithful to the original show, and all of the design changes they made, I 100% approved of. Like, I felt like good design changes.
Yeah. Pretty decent visuals for the most part.
And they didn't change anything for no reason, too. Like, the cell phone thing, it just kind of made sense. Like, you kind of had to do that. If you wanted this show to still feel like it was set in present day, you had to include some form of that. But it wasn't gratuitous. And then Invader Zim, as I mentioned, I felt like it changed the most.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the stylization. I appreciate the artistry that went into it. I just didn't enjoy it that much.
Okay, now we are going to move along to trivia. So, Monsters, how well do you know Hey Arnold?
Overall, not too well.
Okay, good. Because I'm going to give you the plot synopsis of an episode, and you are going to have to tell me that episode's name. But most of these episode titles, I want to give this to you, are pretty easy. They're like names of things. So you do have a chance here, okay?
Yep.
Prompt number 1. While on a field trip to the aquarium, Arnold sees Lockjaw, a neglected, graffiti-covered old turtle, and Arnold feels bad for it. So later that night, Arnold and Grandma sneak into the aquarium and set Lockjaw free.
I'm going to guess Lockjaw.
You would be incorrect. The name of that episode is called Field Trip.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Okay. A snowstorm comes to the city. Arnold's grandpa tries to teach him work ethic while his friends play without him.
I'm going to guess Snowstorm.
That would be incorrect. It's snow.
Just snow?
Just snow.
For such an immersive and atmospheric show, the titles are a little bit lackluster
you
so
have
far.
snow points. But fun trivia about the episode Snow is that it's paired with an episode called Heat with a heat wave in the city. So there's a little episode theming there.
The binaries.
Mm-hmm. Also, it aired on my birthday, my 3rd birthday. Arnold confronts a man that has known and trusted pigeons all his life after Arnold's pigeon gets sick. The man has not been around other humans for many years, as he feels he cannot trust them. When Arnold takes him for a day in the city, Harold and his friends come along and accidentally destroy pigeon and bird cages, trying to make simple mischief.
Well, I know this episode. I've seen it many times.
What's it called?
It's either The Pigeon Man or Pigeon Man. Do I have to pick one?
You have to pick one.
Pigeon Man.
1 word or 2 words?
2 words.
You're correct. You got one.
Hey,
1 for 3. I also like how the synopsis doesn't tell us like if there's a happy ending. It's just Harold and his friends come along and accidentally destroy bird cages. Oh, okay. Well, I'm an idiot because apparently there's a Harold episode called Parents' Day. So that one where Big Bob calls Arnold an orphan boy. Oof.
Ooh.
That is
rough.
Yeah. So Arnold's parents are referenced in this show.
Just avoiding some corrections for next week.
Right, yeah, here we go. Oh, people have already commented. I can feel it in my bones. All right. Rhonda uses a folding paper fortune teller to see who will marry who, and Arnold and Helga get paired up, causing them to both dream of what life would be like married to each other. Helga dreams of a fabulous life, becoming the president with Arnold by her side, as Lila becomes jealous of their life. Arnold has a nightmare dreaming of him being overworked and Helga doing nothing to help out around the house or with their future children, as she continues to be mean to him.
Give me a hint. Is it either dreams or fortune teller?
No.
Okay, so let me think of one more guess.
That's your hint. I can tell you this episode first aired in Belgium.
Oh, okay. I guess we'll go with We're Married.
Oh, you're so close.
Actually, that was just a generic thing I came up with.
It's just Married.
Yep.
You're still 1 for 4.
Yes.
Last prompt. Okay, here we go.
Here we go. I'm the new kid coming in, getting it done.
Phoebe gets embarrassed after she farts into a microphone in front of a huge audience. What's it called?
I'm gonna guess this one is called fart prank in public. Parentheses, not clickbait. All caps.
That's close. Want to give it one more guess?
Fart.
Just fart, one word.
Sure.
Okay. You are incorrect. It's called Phoebe's Little Problem.
That is a little
like
problem.
I said, last episode aired, in June 2004, so it might have even been aired after the movie for all I know. Actually,
yeah, I think the journal was in 2002.
No, I mean Hey Arnold the movie, which is 2002. Yeah. So, last aired episode. Well, technically it's paired with an episode called Grandpa's Packard, but yeah, there you go.
Cool. 1 for 4.
Yay.
Or 1 for 5. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. You did pretty good. You got 1. All right.
Yeah.
So
it's better than nothing.
And the last one was tricky. That wasn't just like a simple one. So, but I had to include it.
Guys, I got Uno.
Very good.
I'm Eduardo.
Very good. I like potatoes.
Muy bien.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the recast. Next time, we're going to be talking about Infinity Train. And we're going to be comparing the pilot of Infinity Train to the episode based on the pilot, which is the Corgi car, right?
Yes, it's the 3rd episode.
So the pilot versus the Corgi car, which I still haven't seen, but I guess I'll have to by next episode. We'll also be covering news next episode, so feel free to send in some news suggestions. I know there was a lot of Disney news that just came out the day we're recording this, so next week we'll talk about some of the important stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guy rules. Out.
Catch you guys next time.